Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. We'll be dissecting a Blitz game that I played on chess.com. I had the white side against the Slav defense, and I found the game quite instructive as it shows how white can play on both sides of the board. We see some infiltration on the queen side, but then eventually crashing through on the king side. So I found the middle game approach quite instructive to share with everyone today. Okay, let's dive into the video. Okay, so we have the white pieces against Palacio from Mexico. We play d4. So we get into a Slav defense. Do we go semi-Slav? No, he goes mainline Slav. Taking on c4, bringing out his bishop. Knight e5 is my favorite approach against the Slav. We can retake that piece, and the idea now with this try is that we can guard that square and take over the center. So very double-edged position. There's a lot happening here. A lot of activity for black, but this bishop actually is biting into granite at the moment. So while it looks pretty over there, it's not actually doing much. Let's just get our king out to safety. Now we hit his queen. I'm looking to potentially come into e5 as well. So a lot of activity here for white. I've got the big center. We get our queen off that annoying file, and he pushes with c5, looking to undermine this piece. So some interesting things happening here at the moment. Actually, I think this threat is not as bad as it seems because we can take on g6 anytime that trade happens. Okay, so I think that maybe we just bring our rooks into play. So again, if he takes here, we just interpose with this guy here. We need to take advantage of this right here. So I think we move our knight that was being forked, opening up that shot against the queen, and that allows us to take on e7 and that gets us out of all of the forks. So now we hit his knight. We blockade the pawn, and let's see. Just look to get some activity. Looking to reroute the bishop this way. Okay, he prevents that. Looking to come into f4, so I've got to go back and guard that square. He is looking to get active. Let's just make sure that there's no funny business happening here. He is opening up his king. He's not afraid to push his pawns on the king side, so double-edged approach from him. I can come into b6, start infiltrating with my queen. Let's see, so we've got two bishops versus two knights. We need to try to open up the position and break apart the structure. That's how we take advantage of having the bishops against the knights. He's trying to keep things as closed as possible. Let's see. There is this shot at the moment because we have pressure on this guy. So we can try to remove the guard by taking on a6. So the idea is if he takes the bishop, then we can recapture the knight. If he tries throwing in an intermediate capture, it doesn't work because we recapture with the bishop and hit his queen. So let's see what he tries here. It's an interesting position. Two bishops versus two knights, but the center of the board is locked up. He's got a connected passed pawn, which would be extremely dangerous if suddenly all the pieces came off the board. He doesn't take the bishop. I think we can simply drop back, look to continue pressing. Okay, he's just giving me a pawn. Looking to open up lines, but I think that just giving away a pawn for free like that is helping me more than it's helping him. My position is quite stable. It looks a bit funky with this unusual pawn structure, weak pawn in the center of the board, but I don't think that there are any major weaknesses for me to worry about. If he looks to come in through here, we can cover the position quite easily. So I'm going to try to reroute my bishop into the center of the board, take a more active stance. So we come in. I don't think there's anything really happening here. Anytime he tries to put pressure, we can simply slide across to h1. Rook to f1, we've got pressure here now, we can push that guy back. We can double up on the f file, look to add more pressure onto f7. And he runs out of time. Good game, Palazzo. Okay, so let's do a quick game review and see how things played out. Okay, very good accuracy actually. So I got 88.8, lots of 8s there, lucky number. And we have 82 from our opponent. So both sides seem to play a fairly decent game. Let's proceed with game review and see the critical parts of the game. Last book move, apparently. Okay, so in this position here, I played the immediate knight takes c4, which is an inaccuracy and a bit of a mistake actually. I confused some of my opening lines with some other lines that I was considering, such as when black has played the immediate e6 instead. So this knight a6 move I wasn't too familiar with, and looks like I got a bit caught out in the opening here. So I played knight c4 and black comes into b5. I wasn't too worried about this as I thought knight a3 looks pretty good and I can take over the center with f3 and e4, which is a pretty common plan in these Slav games. I didn't realize that black had a pretty sizable advantage in this situation. The engine is giving it as 1.5 in black's favor. I drop back to a3, that square has to be guarded, and he plays e6, which lets me off the hook, and now it's a completely equal game. So what was really strong for him was instead to play queen c7 with the ideas that he can immediately strike in the center and open things up where white is quite underdeveloped, and the center blowing up in this situation actually favors black. So pretty interesting line actually. So that approach with knight a6 is quite an interesting try in the Slav actually. I might take a look at that myself. Okay, so let's go back. I play knight a3, he goes e6, leading me back into the game. I play f3, looking to build a large center. Very common approach in the Slav. He drops back, preempting a4, and now the game is back on level terms. Bishop e7. Okay, let's fast forward to the next critical point of the game. Okay, queen b3, let's fast forward. Okay, so in this position here, I thought that's what I had to do during the game, as if we go back here, there's a lot happening. There's the queen hitting the knight, and there's also a fork here. So actually, white has 3 pieces hanging in this position, and my idea was that, well, actually I can save one of them quite easily by taking on g6, and then follow up with taking advantage of this bad boy here. So that was my idea, but apparently it's inaccurate and doesn't work. So let's see how black can refute my idea. Okay, so apparently starting off with knight d5 was stronger, hitting the queen. So he takes on e5, and then I throw in this check here, and the idea is that now we have pressure on g6, we have the loose knight here. So very interesting position here. Okay, so I instead take on g6 and he recaptures. So that was a huge miss on his behalf. Apparently, instead of recapturing, what he should have done back here was to play bishop to c5. Absolutely incredible. So that idea of, hey, the knight needs to be recaptured because it's hitting the bishop, well, you simply move the bishop. So very interesting approach there. Very difficult to spot something like that in a Blitz game, to be honest. Unless you're someone like Magnus or Hikaru, I think those guys would spot that in like 1 millisecond. Okay, so he retakes. I jump in with my knight, opening up that rook against c7. He steps out of dodge, we exchange pieces. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. Okay, so this was an interesting point here with the tactical shot bishop takes a6. This is a pretty common tactical idea that you need to be aware of. Whenever you see a piece being defended like this with this triangle structure with 2 pawns and a piece being guarded, you can actually sacrifice very frequently on this pawn here, as recapturing that pawn means that the piece is left hanging in some situations. So I take the pawn and he simply moves his rook, as we were threatening to win another pawn as well. So he steps out of that. Let's fast forward. Okay, so at this stage in the game, it was down to a blitz time scramble. We were playing very, very quickly. Rook to f1. The idea is that we have a lot of pressure building up here on f7. We can double up, and it looks really, really difficult for black to hold. And so the remaining moves were just really time scramble. My idea with pushing the knight back is that the knight is a very important defensive piece here on f7. And once that knight is removed from that guard, we can double up, and the pressure becomes pretty much impossible for black to defend without dropping material. Okay, so this was the final position in the game, where my opponent ran out of time, but we can see the engine is giving it as plus 4.5 for white. So it's a very simple idea here of simply doubling up, and the pressure is incredible. If, for example, he tries to drop back with his knight to guard, we simply infiltrate with our bishop as well, looking to remove some of the defenders of this key pawn. And yeah, we can see that white is completely crashing through here. Let's say, for example, he tries to bring his rook down to defend laterally. We actually simply give a check this way, and after white moves, we just start picking up pawns, and the entire center is falling apart. We have pressure coming this way, and yeah, it's a unholdable position for black. Okay, so thank you, Palacio, for that very instructive game in the Slav defense. Hope everyone enjoyed that.